Hey everyone, we're here for another battle report. Once again, we've got Chris, now part of One Plus Armor, sort of. One Plus Chris.
I still go by CanHammer Chris.
From Team CanHammer.
On Twitter.
And One Plus Nick from Team CanHammer. And your host, One Plus Logan, from also Team CanHammer. Yeah, more news on that in the near future.
Yeah.
So today we've got Chris's Deathwing for the fluffiest list we've ever had on the table, up against Nick's Grey Knights, which we'll get to. So Chris, give us a walkthrough of your list here.
Okay, cool. So I basically have 3 identical units. This one, and this one. They are assault cannon, terminators, 4 stormbolters. Sergeant has a power weapon, 3 power fists. Actually, it'd be a 4 power fist, even though he has a chain fist. We're not using that. I chose the assault cannon over the missile launchers because I felt like it's more versatile in the current meta for things like bikes, rhinos, razorbacks, dread knights, things like that are pretty good. Then I have a little small assault unit right there. The simple reason is I just need a few more models to flush it out, so it looks like kind of a mix mash. 2 stormbolters, 3 lightning claw guys. I'll be painting a few more models to replace out of that unit soon. And then I have the big Death Star with Belial. Sergeant with lightning claws. Belial also has lightning claws for anti-infantry. 7 Thunderhammer Stormshield Terminators. 2 chain fists with 2 assault cannons.
Nice. And looks like some other stuff in the back here.
Oh yeah, I have 2 assassins.
2 Calexis assassins?
Yeah.
Nice.
They're the only ones that would fit with my remaining points. Because the problem with this army is once you fit in the basic Terminator units, there's nothing to play with. Yeah. I have 5 points here or there, so I needed 2 assassins to go on the board and survive. And nothing survives better than those assassins because they're only shot at ballistic skill 1. They can hide really well. Psychic powers don't affect them. So so I don't lose turn 1 when my Deathwing army comes in because they can't come in turn 1 anymore. I needed those 2 assassins.
Excellent. All right, we'll be back here with our other fluff player of the night, Mr. One Plus Nick.
Fluff player.
Not fluffy.
What have we got in the fluffy list on this table here?
This fluffy list has Drago with a unit of Terminators. I'm still painting everything up. A level 2 Librarian. It also, so that's 1 troop. Another troop is the Strike Squad, all halberds and the Incinerator. And then an Interceptor Squad with all halberds and an Incinerator and a Teleport Homer. And then I've got 3 Dread Knights, 2 with Gatling Silencers, 1 with a Psi Cannon. These guys have the Flamer model, but I'm actually not using the Flamers. I just didn't want to rip them off. And they all have the Nemesis Greatswords, and then a Imperial Knight with the Battle Cannon, the Rapid Fire.
Paladin, right?
Yeah, that would be a Paladin with the Chainsword. So I guess Chris's army, the Melta Cannon would probably be best, but I'm actually bringing this exact list to a team tournament, Chris's team tournament.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it later, so I'm trying to give it a bit more versatility. With the 2 shots, the longer range. It puts me at a disadvantage against Chris, but I kind of still want to be able to work around it. Hopefully these guys can pull up the slack, but it might be a little tough because he's got a lot of hard-hitting Thunderhammers, so we'll see what happens.
All right, so we'll be back after the table's set up and we'll get our mission. Hey everyone, we're here after deployment. We are playing Mission 1 from the Adepticon Primer, so it's King of the Hill. So basically the main objective of the game, we have an objective in the center of the table here. There's a 12-inch radius bubble coming out from it, so sort of where my hand is going. That's worth the current turn, starting on turn 2, in points. You have to score at the top of your turn, and of course objectives, it's a normal objective, so objective secured trumps not objective secured, that kind of stuff. And then the other main objective is Emperor's Will, so Nick's Emperor's Will objective is right here, and Chris's Emperor's Will objective is right over here. Nick won deployment roll, so he's got his 3 Dread Knights over here, his Knight in the back corner there, and then Drago's units hanging out in the ruins. Nick does have Stealth Ruins as his Warlord trait, and it is Night Fight. Chris got secondary deployments, so he's got 1 Calexis Assassin there, another Calexis Assassin here, and the rest of his army is going to be coming in from Deep Strike on a turn that Nick doesn't know about, based on Chris's formation. So with that, Nick, you deployed first. Would you like to go first or second?
I would like to go second.
All right. So, Chris, you've got turn 1. Hey everyone, I am here with Nick. Oh, I should say this is Logan, and I'm here with Nick. And we're going to be going over a recent game between our friendly neighborhood Nick and CanHammer Chris, who joined us for a few video battle reports, as you may have seen on our channel. So, Nick, what army were you playing going into this?
I was playing my Grey Knights allied with Imperial Knight.
All right.
The Errant, I think. Or no, the
Paladin.
Paladin.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
the battle cannon.
yeah, that guy.
And we had Chris playing his Deathwing strike force allied with 2 assassins, and he had Belial in there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So for this, we were testing out one of the Adepticon missions. That was Scenario 1 in King of the Hill. So let's talk about that a little bit. It's Vanguard deployment. The idea is there's 2 main objectives and then secondary objectives. So 2 main objectives are you mark the center of the table, and then 12-inch radius all around that is the hill. And then starting on turn 2, players that control that at the top of their player turn score a point equal to the game turn. So objective secured, of course, trumps the same way it does with normal objectives. You can contest with objective secured and so on and so forth. And then the second main objective is effectively just Emperor's Will. If you control your own at the end of the game, it's worth the current turn in terms of points. So if your game ends on turn 5, it's worth 5 points. On turn 6, it's worth 6 points. And if you control your opponent's objective, it's worth double the game turn that the game ends on. So similar, if it ends on turn 5, it's 10 points. If it ends on turn 6, it's 12 points. And then past that, we had First Blood, Warlord, Linebreaker, and through attrition victory, the one where for every 3 hull points or wounds you do to a super heavy or gargantuan, you get an extra victory point. So going into this, Nick, you guys got to place terrain, so it looks like the table was relatively symmetrical. What was your plan going into this?
Yeah, I guess my biggest plan here was just to try for symmetrical deployment of terrain, so that if you lose a roll at the beginning of the game, you're not put at a big disadvantage in terms of choosing sides. So yeah, that was, I guess, my biggest one. I honestly didn't put too much thought into it. I just wanted to make sure that each side had a type of ruins that could, bunker the Imperial Knight, so that regardless of whatever side I had, he could hang behind the ruins. And after the fact, it seems a little silly because, he's playing Deathwing, but I'd never played Deathwing before, and I'm still kind of catching up on 40k, so I was trying to cover my bases that regard.
Right. So it looks like for your deployment here, you've got some of your Dread Knights up in the top corner as well as the Knight back there. And
yeah.
you're putting your Terminators down in the ruins as well. So you guys did roll Night Fight for this, and you did get the Conqueror of Cities Warlord trade-off strategic, so all your guys are effectively sitting on a 2+ cover save for turn 1.
Yeah.
Now, keeping in mind that Deathwing have no way to get in on turn 1, what was the idea behind this?
Well, I don't think I realized at the time that they had no idea to get in, or because I was deploying first, so I had no idea if he was going to put his guys on the table or if he was just going to deep strike his whole army. Like I said, I had no idea what Deathwing do. He's the first time I've seen or played against Deathwing, so I heard it wasn't great, but you know what? Chris is a really, really good player, and he makes things work. A lot of people, like, he plays bike spam Eldar, but I think he still can play other armies quite effectively, so I didn't want to take that for granted that he was playing Deathwing. And it's just kind of, I'm a slow learner, so I in the past would try to deep strike everything and that'd bite me in the butt, so now I'm just playing conservatively, making sure everything stays alive.
Fair enough, usually a good choice.
Yeah.
So Chris, basically the only things in his army he could start on the table were these 2 assassins, because everything else is in Deathwing Strike Force. So he's got both on the bottom edge of the table here, so I guess the short edge towards the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
He's got one sitting next to his Emperor's Will objective, which of course doesn't matter till the end of the game, and another hiding behind a hill. So it seems like the idea for this was mostly to keep things out of line of sight and to keep those guys alive until you actually get to the end of it. Now, you can see me here recording because we did the intro for this, of course. I actually filmed. So, so with keeping in mind this setup for the pregame, what were your thoughts going into turn one?
I honestly had no thoughts because at this point I realized Deathwing can choose when they show up, and I know Chris can get a little out. He thinks outside the box sometimes. So I'm not sure if he's coming in next turn full guns blazing, or I'm not sure if he's coming in turn 5 to just jump on objectives. So I think priority number one was I knew that it's King of the Hill, and so I wanted to move up Drago's unit to the center and just kind of park there and hope for the best. And then my next idea was I got to get rid of those assassins, because if he gets them towards the middle of the table somehow, that's a whole lot of bad news for me, because they're both Calexis assassins and I've got all kinds of psychers.
So as you probably saw here, the Dark Angels turn one that showed up at the bottom was not a typo. That was actually Chris's turn one. He did absolutely nothing and just passed right over to you to do your movement.
Yeah. He literally did nothing.
So for his deployment, he had actually sort of hard counter deployed in that he was actually out of range even if you were going to shunt for the first turn. So his whole game plan here was, of course, just to avoid getting anywhere. So you got a couple powers off here. I think you really just cast Shrouding and
About
a couple Sanctuaries.
I think that's about it. Sanctuary, Shrouding, and maybe Force, just in case. I don't think Deathwing can deep strike and assault, but just in case. Like I said, I'm being conservative. But yeah.
Yeah. So this was a learning experience for you for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going into Dark Angels 2 here. You can see Chris just moving his stuff to stay out of range, and he's not actually going to do anything. So I think that was it for his turn actually.
Yep, he still hasn't deployed yet, so I'm a little puzzled here. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know enough. Don't know what to do at this point, but I just know that I got to get to the center of the table with the Drago Star, and now the assassins are priority number one. If he's just gonna keep them on the table, not have anything else, I might as well try to go for them. And this is where I learned the nasty thing about you only hit them on sixes, you only this and that. Anyway, so here I am trying to shunt interceptors, move the Dread Knights within range. The Dread Knights in this setup are equipped with Gatling silencers, so they have force on them. So I'm kind of banking here that I get one hit, one wound through, and he fails a save, just instant death, the assassins.
Yeah, because they are pretty durable. For anyone who doesn't know, for the assassins, you shoot at them at ballistic skill 1, and you hit them in close combat at weapon skill 1.
Yeah.
They're pretty nasty, and then they're toughness 4, 4 up invulnerable save.
Yeah, 3 wounds. So they're not nice.
Yeah, they're a little tough to kill. I mean, in the other battle report we did, he tied up my Fleshhound units for 4 or 5 turns just with a single assassin. So they are.
I don't doubt it.
Potent.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like you did your shunt move here with the interceptors.
Yeah, and then I deep striking.
Deep striking the strike squad. That's right.
Strike squad. Yeah, for some reason I got a little. I thought maybe I could get rid of that assassin with running around or shooting, get kind of lucky or whatnot. I don't know what I was doing, and could take the objective there using objective secured. I also want to put some pressure there, so maybe if I threaten that assassin, he'll dedicate some units over there, and to ease up the pressure I might get at center table. I'm saying that now, but I'm not sure it was that clear in my head at the time.
Fair enough. So again, as you can see at the bottom left here, you did get 2 points going into this turn, because you had your unit in the center of the table going into turn 2 at the top of your turn. So you got your points. And I think right here, we may have just passed, or we're just coming up to it. You did a little bit of shooting over at the... there you go, doing it right now. Some shooting over at the assassin down in the bottom right.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a disagreement in terms of how line of sight was drawn, and Chris was generous and let me shoot, because in some regards I think it's any part of the model, but other compacts it's from the eyes of the model. And then also I had a weapon on the Dread Knight that was modeled but wasn't in use. So anyway.
Yeah. So I think you ended up sneaking 1 wound through on one of the assassins here. Not exactly sure which one, but nonetheless, we now go to Dark Angels 3. Where all of the Dark Angels show up.
Yeah, that's where everybody shows up, and I'm just watching and all like, oh god, what am I going to do here now? Because Terminator's 2+ save, and he's got a bunch of assault cannons too. Like every unit has an assault cannon, so that's a lot of rending. And after a couple games with this army, I realized as soon as you start losing Terminators and Dread Knights, starts to become an uphill battle pretty quick.
Yeah. So that's the thing with elite armies, right? Like, you guys are both playing pretty heavy elite armies in this.
Mm-hmm.
All with lots of 2-up saves, and neither of you really have any 2-up or AP2 shooting, right? It's all close combat for both of you.
Yeah, it's a Terminator slap fight at this point.
Yep. So Chris's turn here. He's bringing everything in. This will take a little bit because there's a heck of a lot of models. So just to recap, I think he had 3 identical units with power fists and assault cannons. And then he's got 1 big unit, I think the unit in the bottom right there is 3 sets of lightning claws and a chain fist, I want to say.
I think he's got 2 chain fists in that
2
unit.
chain fists. And then he's got 1 really big unit that's coming in with Belial, which will not scatter, which may be the one we have here, which I think was 6 or 7 Thunderhammer Storm Shields, 1 or 2 chain fists, and Belial.
Yeah, basically if these guys get into combat, they're causing all kinds of trouble.
Yep. Now, of course, they are Terminators, so they don't exactly move too fast.
No. At this point, I'm not too sure what he's doing. I think he's a little nervous about the Dread Knight there, especially with the no scatter. I don't know if I were him, I would have put that right in the center and start contesting the center table, because I think he was worried about Drago, but other than Drago, I think his Terminators would take care of my Terminators.
Potentially, yeah, because they've got the 3+ invulnerable save. I mean, really, it all boils down to how the wounds get allocated, because you can toss a lot on Drago, and if you get Sanctuary on that unit, he's tanking it with a 2-up and Eternal Warrior. So
I don't think I had Sanctuary.
That's right, you didn't get it in this.
Yeah.
I think I've got it even written down here. You had Shrouding, Terrify, and Shriek.
Yeah.
So nothing too crazy. So Chris is doing a little run moves here, because he can run and shoot the turn he comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing to note, unfortunately, in this game, and we sorted this out for the next game, is Chris did not remember that his Terminators can't get twin linked the turn they come in from Deep Strike.
Yeah, that could have made a difference for him.
Yeah. So we actually figured it out about halfway through the game. We filmed right after this one. And we went back and did it. But as you can see, Chris is rolling a hell of a lot of 1s and 2s for his shooting.
Yeah.
Which does not help.
I think it would have made somewhat of a difference. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Well, I guess we won't see.
Well, we'll see. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. So in all the shooting here, I think the assassin sneaks through a wound on the strike squad. Get a wound on one of the Dread Knights, another Dread Knight, and I think one of your Terminators dies here from some shooting as well.
Yeah. He's throwing wounds into everything. I think he's really trying to focus on the Dread Knight at that point, and I'm getting really lucky with my saves.
Yeah, you got lots of 2-up. There's only so much shooting in the list. A lot of it's wounding you on 6s, except for the assault cannons.
Yeah, that's true too. The Stormbolters only wound them on 6s anyway, so it's a bit of an advantage.
Yeah. So we're going into Grey Knights 3 here. As you can see, you get under 3 points, because again, you control the middle, and your Terminators are, of course, objective secured.
Yes, yeah.
Pretty solid. And you pass a leadership test there that we'd forgotten about the turn before.
Yeah. This point, I'm trying to back away, as you see it. I'm just trying to keep outside of that assassin's range, and I'm still trying to use my gimmick force on the Gatling silencers just to try to get rid of that. Here, I'm being a little shy. I usually with this army, I want to get into combat as quick as possible. I want the Dread Knights in, cleaving up stuff. But with those Colexis assassins, I just can't risk it. So I'm trying to get rid of that assassin first, and that's why you see me dedicating the strike squad, the interceptors to the assassin that's behind the building, and then the 2 Dread Knights are shooting at the one by the hill.
Yeah. So again, just to recap on the assassins, all the stuff we talked about earlier, they also get extra shots. So in the psychic phase, they have a shooting attack. It's strength 5, AP 1. They can use up to 3 psychic dice from the phase, as well as adding all of the mastery levels of the unit they shoot at. They get that many shots at ballistic skill 8, I think. Ballistic skill 8, strength 5, AP 1. So it can take stuff down pretty quick.
Yeah. So, I knew if they got close to the Drago's unit, that'd be trouble.
Yeah.
Especially with 2 of them, they would end up with almost, 8, 9, 10 shots each, guaranteed hitting almost, and a good amount of wounds. And then there's only so much 3-up invuls can do.
Exactly. So in your psychic phase here, you get force on one of your Dread Knights. Shrouding, I think, went off on Drago and his unit.
Yep.
And then up at the top left, you terrified the Terminators and then shrieked them for 0 wounds.
Yeah. That's kind of my gimmick. I over rely on Psychic Shriek, to be honest. I discovered that psychic power and just kind of went nuts, and it's been biting me in the butt.
Yeah. So for some of the shooting here at the bottom left, there was one wound that snuck through on the assassin there, so I think he's down to
Yeah.
1 or 2. And then the force gimmick actually ended up working, and you took out the other assassin there for first blood.
Yeah. I got rid of that assassin with my force gimmick. In subsequent games, I actually got rid of the Gatling silencers because other than that assassin, it's never really done something, and an extra 12 shots of strength 4 AP dash doesn't really help me at all.
Yeah, it's tough. You're sneaking stuff through on like 6s,
Yeah.
not getting through saves.
Yeah, exactly. Here now, I'm just placing basically the pie plate from the knight. He's only AP3, but if you make a guy roll enough saves, he'll start to fail, and I know that all too well. So I'm trying to use that strategy against him.
Yeah, this is before you get your new dice. So
Yeah.
you sneak a couple wounds through there. You get, I think, 2 from the Dread Knight, 2 from the Imperial Knight.
Mhm.
And then Drago's shooting up at the top left there. You can see actually took out 2 Terminators as well.
Yeah, they're storm bolters. There's still 14 shots in there, and I didn't expect to kill 2. I thought maybe one if I got lucky, but yeah, at this point, Chris is getting kind of unlucky with his saves and his shooting the first 2 turns, and that's really what's giving me the upper hand. On top of that, he's him coming in late puts him already on the back foot because he's basically given up the primary objective for 2 turns before he can respond.
Yeah, that was the tricky part with this game, is if you can hold the center late game for a couple turns, you can offset the first 2 or 3, but
Yeah.
it's still a bit rough, especially in this Deathwing Strike Force, because you have 0 objectives secured.
Yeah.
So he has to kill Drago's unit effectively in order to ever score in the middle.
And that's what I figured. As soon as I learned that his stuff wasn't objective secured, I could just park Drago's unit there, and it doesn't matter how many Terminators he has there. It just matters how long I keep Drago alive. And I think I'd calculated too that it really didn't matter at this point how many secondary objectives he got. It just mattered if I maintained the middle and made sure he didn't get the secondary objective by the bottom right. I can't remember, but I remember that maintaining the middle at this point meant the game.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see here we're in the Dark Angel shooting phase. There were 2 wounds that got through on the interceptor, and they ended up interceptors, and they ended up failing their leadership test and fleeing.
Yep.
So they are still on the board. They're down by the 4 in the turn counter there. And then we get some other shooting. What do we got here? Looks like a couple on the Dread Knight, and no wounds, and then some run moves from some of the other Terminators.
Yeah, that's all he's doing now. He's trying to put wounds in the Dread Knights, and he's trying to put wounds in the Terminators to whittle them down. Unfortunately, you can see the double ones he just rolled. His rolling at his dice weren't in love with him that day for sure.
Yeah. So I think this is some Overwatch going in on one of the Dread Knights.
Yeah, so he's finally jumping. He's jumping in. He wants to get in there. He's recognizing that the middle of the table is important, and that he's a little behind. So he's trying to get in and kill the Dread Knight, and wasn't really careful with the Dread Knight's move. That's where I had to put him to get rid of that assassin. But of course, it put me within charge range of these Terminators. And Dread Knights are good, but against a bunch of Thunderhammers, they'll drop quick.
Yeah, and then Belial's in chasing down the interceptors at the bottom.
Yeah, he split that unit and wanted to kill the interceptors.
Yeah, and then that was the start of the combat there with the Dread Knight. Got a couple wounds through, but Chris passed all the 5-up invul saves, which resulted in a Dread Knight going off of the table.
Yeah. That so now he's in the middle of the table, but this is exactly where the no objective secured for Chris is biting him in the butt, which is tragic. That book, if they were objective secured,
it would actually almost be a viable army.
That's absolutely right, because now he's got basically all the objectives and he's contesting the middle of the table. So now I'm going to be behind, but unfortunately they aren't objective secured. So now I realize I want to get rid of these Terminators. I can't have them shooting at Drago's unit nonstop, and I don't want him to start piling them up against him. And then I decided at this point it's time to get the big boy in. He'll play interference against Belial's unit in case Belial wants to get back with his Terminators. But unfortunately I didn't realize that they have chain fists on the bottom right.
Yeah, those things are a little nasty for vehicles.
Yeah.
But so you can see here, you've jumped ahead on score again. We're in turn 4. You're at 9 points on the primary missions, and 1 point on secondary. Unfortunately, still against Chris's 0.
Yeah. At this point, it's not going too well for the Deathwing, unfortunately. I think at this point he's trying to go for the secondary, the endgame secondary, and that's where I realized. So he's sitting on my secondary objective in my deployment zone. Is that mine on the right?
In the crystals, yeah.
Yeah. So know he's going for that, so that because it's worth double the points. So I want to try to prevent him from doing that, and that's why I moved up the Dread Knights there. Now we're just casting. Were we casting Psychic Powers, or no?
Yeah,
We're doing
you got a couple psychic powers there. You shrieked on some Terminators for 0 wounds.
Yeah.
You got denied on Sanctuary on one of the Dread Knights, passed on the other one.
Mhm.
And then there's some Psy Cannon shooting that's going to happen here, which I think you're rolling right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll see how that goes. One.
Yeah.
So all but one of the Terminators in that unit die just due to really unlucky save rolls
He
by
rolled
Chris.
4 ones. I know.
Yeah, and then they got some shooting into the other Terminators who fortunately survive. And then Drago's unit opens up on the guys next to them.
Yeah, and then so this is I'm shooting at those Terminators, and then I'm hoping next turn I can assault them. So yeah, so far the mission's going well, and I quite like the Adepticon King of the Hill mission. It's not too often you see it. A King of the Hill, at least in ITC you don't.
Yeah, so the Adepticon missions, just while we have a little bit of a lull here, are very similar to some of the War Machine style missions where you have scoring zones instead of just individual objectives.
Yeah.
And so far in all the playtesting we've done for a couple of these, it's actually been really entertaining.
I enjoyed this game, to be honest. And you just noticed I failed my assault with Drago, I think.
The 2-inch charge.
I failed a 2-inch charge, and I'm like, oh, I'm a little disappointed there. It means they have to suffer through a bit more shooting. I'm not terribly worried because I have 2 up saves, and he's only got the only thing I'm worried about is his rending assault cannons. But as you can see now, he's kind of lost a lot of Terminators, but he still has all those assault cannons. And I don't want this to be just the Drago and Librarian left, because that's happened a lot, and that gets tricky.
Yeah, it's tough. Who are you going to look out, sir, to? Off who?
Yeah, exactly. So now, he's going for it. So I put my Dread Knight up there, and he sees, the weakness, and he's trying to pounce because he's got the chain fist, and I didn't realize they were chain fists. And I think he announces at some point, I'm like, oh really? And then I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah. So just for everyone's sake, they are actually modeled as chain fists. And
Yeah.
It was noted, so it wasn't necessarily a surprise, just something that was forgotten about until we get to this point in the game.
Yeah, I'm sure he mentioned. Yeah, he definitely mentioned at the beginning of the game, and it just. I think what he said is nobody has chain fists except this unit, and I heard nobody has chain fists. Because I hear what I want to hear, obviously.
So yeah, Chris just moving around, trying to get closer to the center, trying to get some charges going. So a little bit of shooting, some theatrics.
Yeah. At this point, I think he's trying to go all in and overwhelm me, because he still has enough Terminators, enough Thunderhammers and Fists and stuff to whittle down what I have left. Because really, at this point, all I do have are a handful of Terminators, the Imperial Knight, and the 2 Dread Knights.
Yep.
And that's the problem with the lead armies. You at the end, like turn 5, you've got 3-4 models on the table, and you've got to make do. And that's been challenging. And my recent foray at a 40k tournament proved that it's a lot more challenging than I thought.
So we got a couple charges here. There's the unit at the bottom right going into the Dread Knight there.
Yep.
So he manages to get a couple in with his pile, and he'll get the rest. And then he's got his other unit with all the Thunderhammers charging into the Knight.
Yep. So I'm not terribly worried at this point. I'm hoping that one of the Dread Knights lives and Drago lives, and at this point, if the Knight explodes, I'm hoping he's going to take care of some of those Terminators for me.
Yeah, not scatter on Drago.
Yeah, hopefully not scatter Drago out and give up the game. But I gotta admit, at this point, I'm sweating a little. I still think I have the upper hand. He's only got he's got 15 Terminators left, but I suppose that's probably half his army.
Yep.
But I realize that this thing could swing quick if I don't do so well with the Dread Knights or whatever and lose 1 or 2 of them, or if I lose the Imperial Knight. I'm realizing at this point it could swing, and I think here I'm doing my stomps now.
Yeah, so there was a couple, I think 1 whole point as a glance that went through on them, and then double 6s on your stomps.
Yeah, I got super lucky there because he was getting the knight down, and I ended up stomping his
Yep.
Terminators out.
And we're nearly past the point of no return here unless Chris is able to get your Emperor's Will objectives. You're up to 14 points on primary going into turn 5.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I'm gonna be honest. With my inexperience in 40k, this mission was perfect for me because it just meant keep the middle. So it wasn't a lot of thinking involved, to be honest. It was just park my Ubstack, unkillable, well, somewhat unkillable Drago unit, and then deal with what comes to me when they come to me. And here it is. I decide I'm gonna pile in here. And Chris is pretty clever. He thinks this is a perfect opportunity that if he kills a knight, he's going to super explode the rest of everything. A scorched earth kind of attitude.
Well, it's not a bad last resort, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, again, I'm sweating. I'm like, oh, I put myself into this pickle here. And at the same time, I think the Dread Knight on the just the closest one to me, I'm trying to keep within 3 inches of that objectives within the crystals.
Yep. Yeah, so worst case, if he's getting in, he's probably not going to kill your Dread Knight. Plus, they're fearless, which is great.
Yeah.
So you'll be contesting and deny him that objective. But, of course,
Yeah.
you get your charges here, so that's going to end up going away. There you go. And Drago's unit up at the top I don't think, charged the Terminators up there, but you were able to kill a couple, I think, with Purge Soul or something like that. You took out one of them.
Yeah. One of Drago's powers that virtually never used, but I think I failed a Psychic Shriek, and then I Purged Soul, and I was able to kill one. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's...
And then we've got, in the combat down at the bottom right there, I think there's just the 2 Chain Fists left, and they ended up doing 2 hull points on the Imperial Knight.
And I'm lucky that he's not rolling too many extra. I think the Imperial Knight ends up with 1 hull point left.
Yeah, something like that at the end of the game here.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, and I don't have this in my notes, that one Terminator there sticks... Yeah, he sticks around.
Yeah,
Because the combat result was not too far off. I think you killed 2 or 3, and he did 2 hull points, so he's only down by 1.
Yeah, exactly. The Dread Knights let me down there a little, so now he's measuring out whether he can get in and get rid of the rest of the squad there. He's going for broke at this point.
Yeah, so he's got his Emperor's Will objective pretty much guaranteed, because there's only possibly 1 turn left. But there's no way he's going to take the middle on this, so he has to try to get your Emperor's Will, get his. So basically, he's got a long bomb charge here with his Terminators. I think it was about 12 inch to try to get into the Knight there. And then he's got the one at the bottom right, which I think he was just setting up to try to deny. But yeah, he's in a bit of a pickle going into this.
Yeah, at this point, I think he needs to table me. He needs to, I don't know exactly how Adepticon works, if you keep your points or not, but if he gets the crushing victory by tabling me, that's what he has to go for at this point.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was the end of that Terminator in Chris's turn 6. So you get your consolidate moves. Oh, and there we go. We go into your turn. You charge Terminators there. You're up to 20 points on primary. Chris has no way now to score your Emperor's Will. So you bring your knight up there, and his gun breaks off. And go for the charge, I think, here. Yeah, so you get both your Dread Knights into that Terminator.
Because my Dread Knights aren't objective secured, so while his guy is within range of that objective, I don't get it.
Yeah. So Drago's unit kills all those guys there, I think with a Psychic Shriek. Takes them out there. Right, so you haven't charged, you were just moving in there, but yeah. So they kill, they run back towards the center. And you drop some pie plates on those Terminators there.
Which is a bit ballsy because it's...
Yeah, with 1 hull point left.
Yeah, at this point I don't think I was too worried. I didn't really need the knight anymore, and if he exploded and killed more Terminators, wasn't too worried. That's a nice thing about 40k is that it doesn't always matter if things die.
Yeah. So you failed your save on the knight and failed the charge.
Yeah.
So you got all your attacks from the Dread Knights into the Terminator down at the bottom right, though.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna die.
And he gets punked.
And then I consolidate, keep that objective, and then I think Chris said, "Screw this."
Yeah, he had no way to win on a turn 7, no matter what he did. So that was the end of it there. So the final score ended up being 26 points for the Grey Knights on primary, 1 point on secondary, to 6 points on primary for the Dark Angels, and no points on secondary.
Yep.
Anyway, with that is the end of our battle report. If you do like this format, please let us know. We think it's pretty fun. So we're going to try to do these every so often, especially with our live stream ones that we're recording as well. So let us know what you think. Leave some comments below. Get in touch with us on Twitter, email, website, YouTube comments, what have you. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our channel here on YouTube and check us out on Twitch TV. It's twitch.tv/OnePlusArmor. We stream every Wednesday, sometimes Tuesdays as well for the CanHammer podcast. But every Wednesday we've got either a 40k or War Machine battle report for the foreseeable future anyway. We're trying to keep that going, but we'll see how the scheduling works out. Past that, if you do like everything we've got here, you want to support us, we do have a Patreon page. If you want to, pledge even as little as $1 a month to us, every little bit helps. There's various rewards, there's dice, there's t-shirts, there's tournament entry, all that kind of cool stuff. So check that out over at patreon.com/OnePlusArmor. But past that, thanks for joining me, Nick. And
Thank
all
you, sir.
viewers, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
All right. Cheers.